The Architecture of Protection, Drake, MJ, and the Music Machine. The narrative that Aubrey Graham is the natural successor to Michael Jackson is not an organic cultural consensus. It is one of the most calculated pieces of corporate branding in modern music history. Drake has spent years explicitly cementing this framework. He bought Jackson's unreleased archive vocals for his 2018 track Don't Matter to Me. He explicitly aligned their legacies on First Person Shooter, rapping about being one song away from Michael Jackson. And when he finally tied Jackson's record for the most Billboard Hot 100 #1 singles by a male solo artist, he celebrated by recreating the iconic Billie Jean white glove imagery on Instagram. But when we peel back the layers of the corporate mythology, the comparison between Drake and Michael Jackson completely disintegrates. To equate Drake's statistical dominance in the streaming era with Jackson's physical cultural legacy is to confuse algorithmic saturation with genuine societal impact. The mechanics of how these two artists achieved their numbers reveal a massive cultural divide. When Michael Jackson achieved chart-topping milestones in the 1980s and 90s, it required an active, deliberate physical sacrifice from the consumer. Millions of individuals across the globe had to physically leave their homes, travel to a brick-and-mortar store, and spend their hard-earned money to buy a vinyl record, a cassette tape, or a CD. Jackson's multi-platinum status was a reflection of absolute, undeniable public demand. Conversely, Drake's record-breaking metrics are heavily inflated by the passive architecture of the modern streaming ecosystem. On modern platforms, a single user playing a bloated 25-track Drake album on repeat while they sleep contributes heavily to his Billboard charting positions. The algorithm serves his music via autoplay features on dominant playlists, converting passive listening into historic achievements. Furthermore, their cultural footprints occupy entirely different universes. Michael Jackson's frame was truly monocultural. He united global demographics across every age, race, and socioeconomic background, fundamentally altering the fabric of global pop culture through his revolutionary choreography, long-form music videos, and genre-defying production. Drake's dominance, while immense, is highly fragmented and online-centric. While Jackson spent his career pioneering new artist frontiers, Drake has spent over a decade perfecting a highly successful but remarkably static formula, consistently mining atmospheric trap beats, ambient R&B, and localized subgenres without ever truly challenging the status quo. The contrast between these two figures becomes even more glaring when analyzing how the global media apparatus responds to the deeply unsettling controversies surrounding their personal lives. The handling of their respective scandals exposes a shifting corporate landscape, showcasing how major record labels have evolved from exploiting an artist's public downfall to aggressively weaponizing their resources to insulate a multi-billion-dollar asset. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, the public allegations against Michael Jackson were a permanent, hyper-visible fixture of global media. Despite his unfathomable wealth, the traditional tabloid empires and legacy broadcast networks aggressively pushed a narrative of bizarre behavior and severe moral decline. The institutional response to Jackson was punitive and alienating. The media machine realized it could generate massive revenue by defaming and sensationalizing him, resulting in intense legal scrutiny, hyper-public trials, and a permanent staining of his commercial viability during his lifetime. Jackson was routinely hunted by the press, and his eccentricities were magnified into public horror stories. Now consider the modern treatment of Drake. For years, Drake has engaged in a series of highly criticized, deeply unusual interactions with young women that, in the modern era, should lead to a career-ending firestorm. His documented text exchanges with actresses like Millie Bobby Brown and singer Billie Eilish when both were minors alongside an infamous 2010 concert video showing him pulling an admitted 17-year-old girl onto a stage to kiss her, are readily available across the internet. Yet, these incidents rarely receive sustained mainstream journalistic investigation. Instead of an institutional takedown, the modern music industry actively works to scrub, clean, and neutralize Drake's image. Because Drake is the single most critical revenue driver for UMG or Universal Music Group and dominates streaming platforms, his public standing is protected by intense corporate self-interest. Negative narratives are rapidly neutralized. The media machine drops the curtain, replacing investigative journalism with a flood of distracting internet discourse, immediate strategic single drops, and automated playlisting that pushes his massive back catalog to the forefront. The mainstream press handles these issues safely, categorizing them as internet rumors or toxic social media chatter, rather than treating them as a matter worthy of rigorous accountability. This corporate protectionism was put on full display following his historic 2024 rap feud with Kendrick Lamar. The internet was flooded with allegations labeling Drake a predator. Rather than allowing the public discourse to play out, Drake's legal team filed an unprecedented defamation lawsuit against UMG in a desperate attempt to hold the label accountable for distributing and promoting Lamar's hit, Not Like Us. Even after a federal judge dismissed the lawsuit, ruling that the diss track constituted protected rhetorical hyperbole in a rap battle, Drake's high-powered legal team pushed the case to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, aggressively fighting to use the legal system to suppress and penalize the corporate distribution of any narrative that damages his brand. But now, the critiques aimed at Drake have evolved far past typical hip-hop bragging or standard rap beef insults. Detractors, cultural critics, and peers have increasingly begun framing Drake through the lens of systemic, institutional exploitation, drawing direct, unsettling parallels to predatory power structures established by figures like Sean Diddy Combs and Jeffrey Epstein. The comparison relies on three core operational pillars: the grooming ecosystem, the gatekeeping of upward mobility, and impenetrable capital. Predatory networks do not operate in a vacuum. They require an asymmetric power dynamic where cultural, financial, or professional access is bartered for compliance, shielded entirely by corporate complicity and legal intimidation. The historical architectures built by both Jeffrey Epstein and Diddy relied entirely on a highly normalized pipeline of young, impressionable, and often vulnerable individuals. These victims were systematically introduced into elite social circles under the calculated guise of professional mentorship, artist opportunity, or high society networking. Critics argue that Drake operates a modernized, digital-era variation of this exact pipeline. Utilizing his undeniable star power, Drake frequently positions himself as an online mentor or big brother figure to incredibly young, up-and-coming female stars and influencers. This behavior establishes an intense, deeply asymmetrical power dynamic that effectively blurs the lines of appropriate professional boundaries, gradually normalizing his access to youth under the protective banner of Hollywood networking. Both Diddy's infamous industry gatherings and Epstein's private networks operated on a rigid transactional premise. Access to extreme wealth, career longevity, and industry advancement required an entry into a closed, morally compromised world dominated by a single gatekeeper. In contemporary pop culture, Drake's sprawling, hyper-monitored Toronto mansion, known as the Embassy, has been viewed through this exact lens by his sharpest detractors. The Embassy functions as a hyper-controlled, insular environment where youth models, influencers, and emerging artists are brought into a world completely isolated from standard industry oversight. Within this space, Drake wields absolute authority. The accusations in that he leverages the immense value of the Drake cosign, a cultural endorsement that can instantly launch an unknown artist into multi-million-dollar stardom, to maintain an entourage of young women who cannot easily refuse his advances or defy his terms without completely sabotaging their professional futures. Ultimately, the dark parallels connecting Drake to figures like Diddy and Epstein rest on the concept of institutional immunity achieved through immense capital. For decades, both Diddy and Epstein utilized their massive financial resources, aggressive legal intimidation, and the complicity of the mainstream media to operate their networks in plain sight, completely untouched by the law because they were too well connected to disrupt. Drake's critics argue that he enjoys a modern iteration of this exact corporate immunity. As a multi-billion stream asset whose music dictates the financial quarterly reports of major record labels and tech monopolies alike, Drake has become entirely too big to fail for the music industry. The economic consequences of his cultural collapse would be catastrophic for his corporate partners, creating a powerful incentive for collective institutional blindness. This systematic protection ensures that behavior which would instantly dismantle the career of a lesser artist is actively smoothed over, buried beneath the noise of the algorithm, and scrubbed from the cultural consciousness. But I think I'm going to leave this one here for now. Like I said, I was going to do a part 2 to the other video I made. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and drop a comment. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. But I'll leave it here for now. Like I say at the end of all my videos, I love you, stay safe, good luck, and take it easy.